When I left my abusive relationship, to say that I felt broken was a vast understatement. I literally felt shattered. I felt like I was in a million pieces on the floor. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was stuck in a trauma bond. And I think that was a huge factor in why I felt like I couldn't leave. And just how do you even heal from that, right? It was just the most confusing, horrible time of my life.
Yeah. I wish one of the multiple therapists I was consulting with during that time with me would have even used that term or had any idea what that meant, because the onus and the responsibility kept being put back on me to figure out what it is that I was missing about myself that would have liberated me from this. And I think that brokenness really speaks to me, because you feel incompetent. You feel like you just aren't who you thought you were, almost like an imposter is how I felt, trying to navigate your way out of it. And it would have been wonderful to have the right information so that I could not necessarily get a rapid recovery, but be on the right path to it. Because I think you know how many paths you can go down that are the wrong path if somebody doesn't know how to really help you understand what you're going through.
Yeah. I had a lot of experiences in therapy, actually, both couples and individual, that was like just unbelievably invalidating to me. I remember having this conversation about throw pillows once, and it was sort of like, why do you care so much about the throw pillows instead of what do the throw pillows represent? Because I can promise you, I was not really talking about throw pillows. So it
Right.
bothered me, and even in couples work, talking about respect and communication. And I'm like, this is abuse, right? Although at the time, I admit I didn't have the language. And I think that's really interesting that people say, we need to have the language in order to tell the therapist. I would really appreciate a therapist who has the language and can share it with me. But there's a real lack of training, in all the programs that I've heard from so many therapists. And I'm sure you can agree, unless you sort of take an interest in abuse and domestic violence and cluster B disorders and recovery and trauma bonds, you don't really know.
Yeah, it's a specialty that is not typically sought after. And I think one of the reasons is because most therapists, I think, in their defense, it's like they don't want to immerse themselves in the personality disorder specialty. I mean, it's difficult work, right? And so, but it can cause a lot of harm inadvertently, not intentionally, but inadvertent invalidation and harm to clients who are trying to explain to their professional whom they trust, hey, I think that there might be some intentionality to what this person's doing. And then to hear back that, well, I think that you're just interpreting it wrong, or it takes two, or maybe we have to delve into your childhood to figure out why you're perceiving this person this way. And, the research has shown, sadly, that even with domestic violence, couples are likely to go seek therapy after a domestic violence incident, and that the therapist will completely overlook the violence and just validate the abuser and the victim. So there's a lot of things that have just been overlooked as far as identifying this type of abuse. But I remember when I was going through my relationship and trying to navigate it, my partner would actually have our couples therapist on speed dial as like a threat. I'm going to call her. I'm going to call her if he keeps doing this, as if like I'm going to be punished for trying to defend myself or advocate for myself in a reasonable way. And it would disarm me. It would be like, well, yeah, if she goes and reports that I overreacted again or I was emotional again, it's going to look like I'm the culprit. So I was kind of being held hostage in this weird way. And it was really weird to have a threat like that. Like, I'm going to reach out to the therapist to prove that you're the problem rather than I'm going to reach out to see if we can resolve the problem together. That's a red flag there. But at the time, you're so immersed in the cognitive dissonance, you think, oh, I better calm down or I better relax so I don't get in trouble. You know,
Yeah.
there's just so many things that we just, at the time, we have no idea that are just other aspects of the abuse.
It's so damaging. Like, I think it destroys a part of you. And I know we feel broken. Like, I was like, I will never be okay again. I sort of was trying to find a way to accept that. Like, I'll be broken forever. And I have shifted so much in my view of that. I think that we get damaged, absolutely shattered. I think we feel broken. But I really prefer
Yeah.
that sort of take that, like, we're unbreakable. You can't break me.
Yes.
And actually, just even
No.
for spite and ego, you will not break me. I will
That's
rebuild
right.
and I will do it even better. But now, as a coach, I watch people and I help people get unbroken, so to speak. I watch people
Yes. Yeah.
rebuild and living these amazing lives that are so much better than before you even met the person, let alone while you were coming out of it, feeling your absolute worst.
Yeah. I think if you can break free from the idea that you are contributing to this in some way and that it's sort of this inevitable harm inflicted upon you, you will start to feel less broken. And so I think that requires, though, the right environment, the right support, the right education, the right information, the right, professional to just kind of help you see all of these variables that are outside of your control that really are not necessarily contributing to the abuse. But it's like you need to understand that you'll feel broken as long as you stay in this, but there is a way to not feel broken and to feel restored and to rebuild that sense of self that is just annihilated by somebody who's intentionally trying to, break you down.
You made me think of this question that I get all the time, which is how do you break a trauma bond? Which is a valid question. And it's just not a simple answer. There's no quick answer. And I always feel like the people that ask me that are asking with such panic in their voice, like, how? Just tell me quickly. How do I make the pain stop? And I relate deeply to the desire to break it quickly, to the urgency in not feeling this way anymore. But ultimately, there isn't a quick way. But I know that, working individually with a therapist who understands it, not just any therapist, and working with groups often or in person can be really helpful. I think there's something really amazing about doing this in person. We're so online now, but something about being in a room with people who get it, because I don't know about you, but I constantly hear nobody in my life really understands. Some people do their best and they're trying to be supportive, and some people not so much. But even the people that are doing their best, like if you haven't been through this, I don't know if you really get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't want to take away anything from the online, resources because I think that's all that people have at their disposal. I think it's wonderful. It broadens the reach. There is something to be said for spending time in person with a community or a group of people who really, really can validate you. I think when I look back on my history of sort of the trainings that I went through as far as specialties and certifications related to my therapy practice, the ones that were the most impactful were the ones that took place over the course of a weekend. And it was just this interesting thing. It was like all the ingredients were there that were really necessary. There was a group of collaborative people, which how often are you in a collaborative group of people where you can guarantee that everyone, they invested enough time and money and travel and everything that they actually are not, they're not going to mess around with this. So there's this unspoken collaboration. And then you see it manifest throughout the course of the weekend. Then you see the empathy and the compassion that the same types of people have who would gravitate towards an event like that. And then you have this empowerment component where even if we talk about difficult things, there's going to be no negative associations, throughout the course of this time. So it's almost like I had this rapid, I'm not going to say that it's a guarantee, but I had this rapid restoration experience in these trainings just as a therapist, learning how to implement a new technique. And so everybody kind of unanimously feels like this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity and we reflect on it later and everybody typically exchange numbers and they want to stay connected after and they just want to reminisce about how powerful it was. And the effects are, long lasting for that very reason. It's like all of the ingredients that you just can't artificially create are there. And there's just something so powerful about that I think is going to be a wonderful experience for people who are really, really looking to be serious about dismantling these bonds and not knowing how to do it yet. But there's just so many elements that are going to just come together in a weekend. And it's almost like you can experience like sort of a quantum leap of feeling more hopeful and more empowered and feeling more like yourself. And I feel like that can be rebuilt in a short amount of time with the right environmental circumstances and all those other things.
Yeah, like the perfect storm in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've hosted in-person events for healing all over the United States and Mexico, and I so agree with you that there's just something different about being there in person. I remember watching this one woman who walked into the event and was nervous, so nervous at the beginning, because the truth is you're flying somewhere to show up to go meet a bunch of strangers who are all traumatized. There's a fear in that and being able to share your story because it has never been safe to really share before. And you're nervous about it. But within, I want to say minutes, but certainly hours, you could see the safety kind of settle in. But I really remember in one of the workshops that we hosted this moment where I watched her. I just couldn't help but notice this moment. And it's like I saw her eyes light in a different way and just go like, oh. And after I connected with her and I was like, did you have a moment and something? And she was like, you have no idea. You just said something in that workshop that just changed everything for me. It completely
Mhm.
opened it up. We were able on some free time to kind of get into a bit of a deeper discussion on it. And it was so life changing. All of the women that have attended events relating to trauma bond recovery, healing, you make friends, you make lasting connections. You're totally right about the group chats and things like that. The friendships last, but
Yeah.
you are healing in community with other people. You feel like you're not isolated anymore. You feel understood and seen. And I know for me, I didn't feel that way when I was healing. I didn't have
No.
that connection to others. And I'm always like, I wonder how much faster it could have been for me, or deeper or better or something, to have that instead of, just therapy. My therapy was incredibly effective, but there's still something
Yeah.
to be said for that in-person community.
Absolutely. The reality checking and reality testing of it, the validation, like everyone has the same story. It's uniquely different, but it's all sort of like the same. I think you're going to get all of the things that all of the coaches and therapists and experts promise are possible. You get, this co-regulation component where like you feel safe the entire time, right? You get the validation that you need. You get people who are genuinely believing you. They're not just like blowing smoke. You get the feeling in your body and your mind. You get this sense of empowerment of like who you truly are is not who you were convinced you were in this relationship. All of those things that people say, this is the end goal for how you're going to feel. You get all of those elements like in these types of experiences, like for a weekend. And for some people are feeling that stuff for the first time because maybe they were in trauma bonds with parents or raising kids, and so it's just a wonderful way to feel like this is what it's supposed to be like day to day. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to provide that as a co-facilitator with you. But I just can't wait to see how many people are just going to feel for the first time, maybe in their lives, like that experience of, I hear people talk about this all the time and I've never experienced it myself, but this is really like one of those places where all the ingredients are going to kind of add up to create that for people. So it's going to be
Yeah.
amazing, very empowering.
Yeah. So for those that don't already know what we're sort of alluding to here, right? We are hosting an event called Unbreakable and Irreplaceable: Rebuilding After a Trauma Bond. And we're going to be going through these 9 workshops, and you can learn more in the description. But the truth is, right, we're going to talk about detachment. We're learning about the toxic roles. We're learning about the traits that you need to look out for, really healing. There's going to be an EMDR little demonstration, which I'm so excited about. I hear so much about that modality so often. People are so interested in it. So you'll get to see that and experience that in person. I think this feeling that after the event, you're going to have sat through interactive workshops and participate and eat and get to know people. After this transformation feeling that you're going to get at the end of really feeling like, I can do this. I can move forward. I can free myself of this. That feeling of detachment I felt was impossible. I remember when I actually had that moment where I went, oh, I don't think I care anymore. I was expecting to be upset by something or rattled by something. And I truly was like, wait a minute, I don't feel that way anymore. That's the feeling that I want people to have when they leave. Like, I can do this. I am strong enough. I am capable enough. I've learned something. I've changed something. Because the key here is discovering something in yourself, right? Why did they do this to you? It's not even really the right question. It's like, who have you become? How have you
Yeah.
made yourself smaller?
Right. Yeah, and that brings a lot up for me actually, because I'm thinking I would have done anything to have had an opportunity to not just kind of sit and wallow in that shame, thinking that there is something I could have done differently. It would have been wonderful, but I was also too ashamed to reach out to a community that could have validated me because I thought I was supposed to have been, known better, or that I was supposed to, have been able to figure out a way out of this. So this is something that and I think we want people to experience so that they don't ever, if they're already going through that, like that idea that I'm going to have to tackle this alone, there's too much shame and associated with this, that we just like, just tear that idea apart and demolish it so that you can really feel like you're not going to, this is a win-win. This type of experience is going to be a win-win. And so I'm really excited to see how much it affects change in people and how they get back to feeling like themselves again.
This isn't just theory. This is in practice. This is real, tangible results. So I want everybody to join us for Unbreakable and Irreplaceable. It's October 2025 in the San Diego area, California. And check out the link in the description to get all the details and sign up, because space is really limited. We're already, tickets are going. So I really want people to jump on this so that you don't miss the opportunity.
I can't wait to see everyone there.